Check it out, y'all.
We're officially in the worst trucking recession in US history, and no one is talking about it. In just 2 years, load rates dropped from $3 per mile to less than $2 per mile. And the worst part is, the cost to run a trucking company is now $2.25 per mile. So, what went wrong? In this video, I'm going to explain how this happened, what's causing this problem, and how you can make money in the trucking recession. So in order to understand how this all started, we have to go all the way back to March of 2020 when the lockdown started. During this time when people were struggling, the trucking industry was actually booming. Since everyone was forced to work remote and social distance, people couldn't spend any of their money on services like restaurants, concerts, vacations, etc. All they could really do is sit at home and buy physical products, things that need to be shipped by trucking companies. And this is where the problem started. Manufacturers started to realize what was going on. Everyone's stuck at home and they keep buying stuff. So what do? They bought more raw materials and made more products, which of course meant more loads for trucking companies. All of a sudden, within just a few months, the spot market was filled with loads that needed to be delivered and not enough trucks to deliver them. It got so crazy at one point that in Dallas, Texas, the outbound volume, or the number of loads that needed to be shipped, increased by almost 100%. There was literally double the loads than there were before. All I'm saying is, if you had a trucking company during this time, you had brokers begging you to deliver loads for $4 per mile when they used to pay you $2.50 per mile for the exact same lane. And like all good things, when people heard about how much money you could make in trucking, this is when the recession started. Here's a graph that shows how many new trucking authorities are made every single year. And as you can see, from 2011 to 2019, you'll have a few hundred people that start a trucking company and shut down their trucking company. This is pretty normal. This is what it's supposed to look like. Now, look at what happens from 2020 to 2022. Within just 2 years, over 100,000 new trucking companies were made, and they completely flooded the market. As more and more people started to join the industry, semi-truck prices also started to skyrocket. It got so bad that at one point, 5-year-old used trucks that usually sell for $40,000 were selling for $120,000.
And real quick, I bought my truck when I first got into the game myself, but I was hauling oil, right? I don't do this over the road stuff. Shout out Ed, he's listening right now. God bless you, brother. He's hauling reefer. He's hauling, like I said, over the road. Probably produce, something that needs to be kept at a certain temperature. But I hauled locally, and my truck was a Cascadia. I paid $54,000 for a 2014 Cascadia. I believe it was about almost 2018, 2019 when I started my business. So that was pretty high. Excuse me, back then it was pretty high, but that was about what it was. Years, like he said, when they start, all these companies started coming out and all these loads hit the load board, and they needed more trucks than they had, right? Like he said, these trucks were going for like $150,000. Probably the same truck I had probably was worth, $70,000 to $80,000. That was a 2014, right? So he's right. And I noticed back then the prices of the newer trucks around that time when it was 2020, they were going for like 150, 170. I'm like, that's more than a freaking house, right? And I saw that, and I knew that was wrong. Like, I ended up buying older trucks. In my older truck, I'm buying those 20,000 cash. And it's crazy because now a 2014, 2015 Cascadia that I bought in 2020 that was worth 53 to 60,000. Now those are going for about 15 to 13, maybe 18,000 for a 2014 to 2017, 20. I've seen 2018s go for 13, 14,000. Nobody wants those newer trucks. Now my trucks that I buy, the older ones, the 07 Freightliner with the 60 series motor, Ed knows, shoot, those are going for 20,000. That's Mando. And that price has been like that back then, even till now. Now you might get a little bit better deal on them, but the older trucks actually retain their value more in this time period than the newer trucks. Why? Because the newer trucks, we all know, well, they're in the trucking industry, they have these emissions put on by Obama and them. They have these regulations with the EPA. They basically put a filter on your truck, on your motor, where it stops smog from going in or out your motor. I forgot how it works, right? Less smog, basically. And that DEF system, that DPF system, should I say, with DEF, that basically turns your motor into mush, man. I mean, it just messes up your motor over time. Those trucks, 2000 and I would say 12 and up, is what has these DPF system, diesel particulate filters. So those trucks, they're basically worthless. Nobody wants those trucks. I don't want them. I'm not going to run them. I buy older trucks, and like I said, right now, my truck, they're worth $20,000. What I bought it for a couple years ago, and I noticed the older trucks keep the same value. They probably dropped a little bit with the value. You can get a better deal now because people are getting out of the game. They're getting out of trucking. But for the most part, an older truck like I bought years back till now, 18 to 22,000 all day, you could buy an older truck, which in my opinion is a better deal. These newer trucks, like he's talking about, they were 150 at one time, 170. Now I see these trucks go for 14 to 18,000. I see it all the time, y'all. Again, I don't want that crap though. I don't want more computers and I don't want more filters on my motor. I'm in the West Texas oil field, baby. Give me the ugliest truck you got with the most powerful motor and transmission out there that's a workhorse. My Freightliner 07 Columbia, that bad boy, little to no computers. It has, enough to get by, but I turn that bad boy on every day and I go make money. The worst thing I have is, maybe transmission issue I had last month, but like today, tires, right? But that's just normal trucking. I don't have any crazy computer issues and I don't have any regen or DPF systems or DEF. I don't have none of that crap on my motor. And I like it like that. I want an older truck with the older motor because they're just more dependable in my opinion. But let's continue with this video, y'all. My bad.
And the craziest part is, truckers were actually paying for them. This one mistake is the reason that so many trucking companies are going bankrupt now. As soon as the lockdown ended, people started buying less stuff and companies started making less stuff. This graph shows us how bad this problem was for truckers because you can clearly see where the outbound volume or the number of loads available drops below the carrier capacity or the number of trucking companies that can move that load. Obviously, when there's more supply than there is demand, load rates were going to plummet. And that's exactly what happened. Rates went from $3 per mile on average to less than $2 per mile. And here's the thing, that's not even the worst part. The trucking companies or the new trucking companies that bought those $120,000 used trucks still had to make payments on those trucks. And not
Real
only
quick,
that,
I'm gonna shout out HCB. I know HCB loves this progressivism, whatever you want to call it. He says analog engines are a thing of the past now. Most mechanics can't work on those by the lack of science knowledge. That's incorrect, HCB. Most mechanics really can't work on the newer engines. I would say maybe, 10, 20 years, it'll be harder. Well, I don't even know, to be honest, because most mechanics I know, they can work on a 60 series motor, N14, the mechanical motors, old school cats easily. Mechanics are barely right now catching up to working on these newer motors. To be honest, the new Cascadia motors, the new Detroit motors, they come in the newer Cascadias. Ed said he's driving one right now. Mechanics are barely starting even to like working on them. They don't like working on the motors. They got too many sensors. They're too complicated. You need certain kind of software. And then the motors are so compact that they can't even get to parts in there. The mechanics I know in West Texas, they hate working on the newer motors, especially the DD15 motor from the new Detroit from Freightliner, or Detroit, should I say. They hate working on them because they're complicated. Most mechanics that I know in my area, they love working on these older motors. So to be honest, I don't think in 10, 20 years, I'm pretty sure these older motors are going to keep on rocking and rolling because my truck just turns on and runs. But if you think about it, a more simple motor it doesn't need more, complicated machinery or equipment or tools. I mean, my cousin does most of my work, and he's just a regular, mechanic, shade tree mechanic, and he does my oil changes. He does he does a lot of work on my 60 series motor because it's so simple. So I don't think that's true, HCB. The further we get along down the line, people are gonna, I guess, further with technology. But like I said, most mechanics here, they're barely even catching up to these newer motors. They all like to work on older motors, more simple, less of a headache, and more space to work around and grab parts in the motor. And to be honest, when I look at my motor, it's very simple. It's a motor, little filter here and there, the radiator, the coolant reservoir. It's a very simple setup. These newer motors are not like that.
this is during a time when diesel prices hit a new record high. You would think that these trucking companies would just sell their trucks now, and leave the industry, but they don't even have that option anymore. The used trucks that they bought for $120,000 are now worth about $20,000. So even if they sold their trucks at a loss, the banks will still come after them for the rest of their money. And if they don't pay up, you could end up losing your house, your cars, your savings, everything that you own. Now, this brings me to where we are today. The only reason this trucking recession is still going on is because we still have this excess carrier capacity that we need to get rid of. This number is dropping very, very quickly. As you can see, there's
too many trucks. So to be honest, I hate to say it like this, but it's true. The more trucks go out of business, the more companies go belly up, the better. For people like me, I got an older truck. My truck, I have no debt. My truck and trailer are both paid for. My crew trailer, my truck's paid off. I got a couple of them paid cash, and I could survive this downturn. Can a company with a big old payment for $120,000 piece of equipment, can they keep making those payments on this equipment whenever they bought it under this, when it was booming, and now the rates, like he said, they dropped more than half probably. Think about that. And like I said, that's when this thing's going to correct itself. Less guys get out of here. The more guys get out of here, the better for us. But I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if he touches on this, but there's a lot of people with out of the United States licenses. I think that's wrong. A lot of companies hire guys from Mexico and other countries to come work here, primarily from Mexico. That messes up our rates. People come from all kinds of countries, and they come drive. And more drivers on the road means the rates, they don't ever go up because we got too many trucks and we got too many drivers. Let's continue.
Been thousands of trucking companies shutting down every single month since the end of 2022. But there's still a long way to go. Now, no one really knows when this trucking recession is going to end. But what I do know is that this is the best time in history to start getting direct shipper contracts. After the lockdown ended, a lot of big carriers panicked and signed contracts with shippers for really low rates. For the past few years, these contract rates have been a little higher than the spot market rate.
Okay, so he's going to go into this other maneuver. I think he's trying to sell a course or something, but I like how he broke down. He has a pretty good channel, y'all. I forgot what the name is. I'll put in on this video or when I drop the other one by itself. But this guy just basically talked about the recession, how it happened, right? Basically, during the Rona season, a bunch of products needed to be shipped. They didn't have enough trucks. People went to business, bought a lot of trucks at a high rate for the truck, to get them financed or to buy them. And now, I mean, you can watch TikToks of people basically cussing out the brokers that are the middleman with these loads, because these loads are not paying nothing. I mean, I would love Ed to call in one day and interview Ed and ask him how it goes on the road. But I already know. I follow the pages, the channels. I'm involved in the trucking industry. I know exactly how it is. And right now in America, the trucking industry has gone to crap. I've even considered being a company driver, to be honest, y'all. If it wasn't for my equipment being paid off, I probably would have done so. But I do like that I have my own equipment. I paid for it cash. I don't have any debt, and I get to make decent money. Not the best, but it's good enough, and I can come home early. I don't got to work a full 15 hours every day. I can work, 10, 8, if I get lucky, and still make decent money compared to a company driver. But there it is, y'all. The trucking industry is headed down the